So I'm now going to move on to The Deepest Well by Dr. Nadine Burke-Harris. So this book is about, again, early childhood trauma, but Dr. Harris looks more at all of the traumas that a young person can be affected by before the age of 18. And she looks into this study called the ACEs study. Sorry, my mic is here, I forgot. She looks into this study called the ACEs study, which was conducted by, I forget the name of the two doctors, but it was conducted ages ago. And these doctors were so committed to getting to the bottom of why it is that certain health problems happen to people that have experienced more trauma. Like, what is that? Let's figure this out. They were so committed to getting answers that they studied over 17,000 families, and that's what makes it such a robust study, and that's what makes the data so incredibly, I guess, magnetic, right? Who wouldn't want to look at that data? And what they found was that the more ACEs, which stands for adverse childhood experiences, the more their risk of developing long-term illness, disease, mental health problems, and ultimately a shorter life, basically dying sooner and having more illnesses in life. And so adverse childhood experiences were things such as growing up with physical abuse either being done to you or the people around you. That's a big one, I think. The patriarchy. Some people think the patriarchy is all about feminism. It's not just about that. The patriarchy has been built upon generations of subjugating people that are weaker. And so a part of the patriarchy is corporal punishment towards children. And so who hasn't experienced it, seen it, or know about somebody that's close to them who's not been physically abused at some point in their lives? So ACEs, so there you go, physical abuse is one risk factor. Things like if you grew up with a parent who had mental health issues, or a parent who was depressed, or if there were drugs in the house, or alcohol, a lot of alcohol usage in the house. God, what else? I think divorce is one of them. There's like various factors. You can go and do an online quiz as well, if it's kind of a morbid one, but yeah, you can go and do it because you normally do quizzes to find out like, what colour ice cream am I? What character from Friends am I? But yeah, you can go and do a quiz and find out what your ACEs score is. And they found that it was something like 60-something% of society has got at least one ACE score. And then it was something like, I mean, don't quote me, I don't have a book to flip through, so I can't, but it was, again, something like 18% or something of society has 4 ACEs, which in some cases can almost double their risk of getting heart disease, which is like crazy. And it's like, so this is we're talking on huge scales of how important and relevant and appropriate this is for us to be studying, because we are all likely touched by ACEs. And so how does that affect us biologically, neurobiologically? How has that affected us? What was laid down in those early years, which we now see the effects of? You hear of, and I'm not sort of saying this has to be the case because obviously I'm not an expert on this, but you hear of these young people who randomly, 20-year-old gets a heart attack, or the ever-growing rates of, I think an increased risk of cancer is one of the risk factors there of which correlates to a higher number of ACEs as well. So like, young people getting cancer, like just all these long-term illnesses that you think, that person was perfectly healthy. Like, they were healthy for years, right? And then like suddenly they just, unknown, they just like passed away. This seeks to explore and understand why that happens. And you guys, there is robust data now coming out of the research that Dr. Harris is doing, and she is incredible. Like the empathy that she puts into, again, because they go through case studies, right? The way that she handles these cases and these individuals, these humans, from such a compassionate place and then therefore the tenacity that she has in like exploring the ACEs and getting answers and doing something about it, putting things into practice, and distributing this knowledge amongst the appropriate organizations in order to get the help given to the people that need it. It's inspiring. The lengths that she goes to get help for these families, for children that she doesn't even know, but you just have this thing, right? You want to help people. And so I guess it's a part of being a doctor anyway. But Anywho, so yeah, the data that's coming out of it is so fascinating, right? So they find that ACEs, in other words, so what do adverse childhood experiences do? They increase stress levels. And what she says is that there is a type of stress called toxic stress. There's a healthy stress that you need, right? So if there's like a fire, you're going to be stressed because that stress is going to, you know, get the adrenaline pumping. It's going to give the appropriate responses, hormonal release. It's going to get your muscles working to get away from danger. Obviously, that's a good type of stress. But the toxic type of stress is the type of stress that is harmful to you, and that usually the effects of which are long-term and carry on way past the stressor that was initially causing the stress in the first place. So they found that toxic stress affects us at a genetic level. It alters DNA. And she goes into something called epigenetics, which is basically, so you have your DNA, right? And our DNA is coded, it comes in a code, and it gets like transcribed and translated in each cell, and then the appropriate protein is made, and those proteins are then building blocks for various other things. So, but anyway, the DNA codes us, right? Epigenetics is not just, it's not the coding of the DNA, but it's how that coding is read, and if it's read. So it's not necessarily the sequence of the DNA, but how that sequence is, or if it is translated in the body, if it ever comes to effect, kind of thing, okay? Because our DNA codes for various things. Some of those things, you will see that in our phenotype, going back to like secondary school science, and some of those things you won't. So what they found is that toxic stress affects our DNA and how it's read, and it affects, there's these sort of proteins that kind of cling on to parts of our DNA, preventing it from being interpreted, preventing it from being like translated and expressed, right? And so these little proteins that stop those parts of the DNA from being expressed, they're affected by toxic stress. And then you've got these, so you've got your DNA, and then on each part of the DNA there's something called telomeres. And these telomeres, she describes them as like being bumpers for the car. They protect the DNA. So the longer your telomere, the more protected your DNA. Okay, and if your DNA is not protected and it breaks down, that cell kind of dies, and that's how you get like that basically premature aging. It's like an aging of the body. So for example, if you've got in your skin, right, you have fibroblasts. There's these cells called fibroblasts, and they are the cells that make collagen. So if your fibroblasts die sooner, then you're going to get premature aging. Do you know what I mean? Like, so these cells are responsible for literally, and it's not just about skin, it could be like organ aging, it could be anything. So anyway, so these telomeres protect the DNA, like the bumpers. As these telomeres degrade, there is more of a chance of that DNA being degraded too, breaking down, dying, right? And problems in the cells, or problem in how that cell is behaving. Because ultimately, remember, cancer is just an overproduction of cells. It's when the cell just can't stop dividing because something's happened there at the DNA level that's causing those cancerous cells to propagate. So these telomeres, as they wear away, obviously that's bad. And what they found was that toxic stress makes the telomeres wear away, right? And it's just so blinking fascinating. And remember, the length of the telomere is also affected by genetics. So they're talking about, like, in the future, are women going to screen men to see who's got the longest telomeres? And that's who I'm going to like mate with and have kids with, because, you know, there's a DNA, there's a genetic element to that, to the passing down of the DNA. But then they found this, get this, right? So telomeres can be made longer and built back up by this enzyme called telomerase. I think that's how you, telomerase? I studied this as well, I should know this all the top of my head, but yeah. And what they found was, so get this is really exciting. They found that the production of telomerase, in other words, the ability to build the telomeres back up, is affected positively by things like mindfulness. Bam, you guys! If that's not a case for self-care, I don't know what is. Because like mindfulness, meditation, relaxation methods, you know, all the things that I talk so much about, self-love, taking care of yourself, emotionally, physically, all of this stuff plays a part in it, because all of this goes a long way in reducing your toxic stress long term, and helps you to be more aware of how you react to situations that could potentially cause toxic stress, because that situation is rooted in a very old memory that you might not even be aware of, that you're living from that place, from that old memory, but you don't even know. And so that stress, where it comes from, is rooted somewhere else that might be completely subconscious. So like, nobody can be free from stress, because we're living day to day, every moment, every memory that we're making right now. The amazing thing about the brain is that that memory is connected to an older memory, which is connected to an older memory. So nobody can escape this. This is human nature, right? And so this is why this stuff is self-care, right? Mindfulness, being present in the moment, living your life, trying to live from a positive place and being around positive influences, and loving yourself, right? If you have an appreciation for yourself, you're going to want to do good stuff for yourself. Why all of that is so, so important, because it's literally linked to being able to transform us genetically, like on that level. I find that so flipping exciting. And the research that's coming out of this field is just, I'm just on it, like I'm just reading so much stuff. I find it so fascinating. So it's not just about the ACEs and be like, oh crap, I've got like 8 ACEs, you know, oh, or like whatever, or phew, I've only got 1 ACE. It's not about that. It's about how can we take this knowledge and apply it to not only our everyday lives, but use it to understand the people around us and what they've been through. Yeah, it's about human connection. Again, then this goes back to quality human relational healing and what we can get from the people around us if we allow ourselves to live from that place, because the life that we experience is in our hands. We build the life that we experience. Our perception of the world is the world. And so imagine the power, the incredible revolutionary power that each of us holds. And I do believe that, I always say knowledge is power. I'm going to drop that cliche again. And I think for me anyway, learning this type of stuff, and I just love neuroscience. That's my thing anyway. But whatever you can, whatever type of knowledge appeals to you, focusing on that, to take from it what is beneficial to you and the people around you, so that you can be an agent of change and positivity and healing. Just like imagine the power that has. So yeah, this video is going to be so long, but I don't care. It's like 45 minutes long. Thank you for sticking. For anybody who has stuck through to the end, thank you so much. Let me know what your thoughts are on any of the concepts that I've mentioned in this video, or any book recommendations that you guys have. A lot of the book recommendations that you guys left for me on my Instagram post, funnily enough, I had read them, and I got DMs of people recommending like talks and books, and I'm like, oh my god, I've already read this. This is so exciting. It's a real book club. Yeah. Whew. Excitement now subsided. I've got all this stuff out of my system. So thank you again for watching. I'll catch you soon whenever the next book recommendations come. I do have like a few more on my mind, but all that's to come. So yes, take care. Mwah.